Well, today I'm going to talk about whose side we're on, and you'll think that's kind of an odd thing for Epiphany Sunday, but hopefully as we get into this, we'll understand more about that. Julius Caesar knew that people wanted to kill him, and there were very few people that Julius Caesar could trust. One of the few people that he could trust, his name was Brutus, and Brutus was almost like a member of Julius Caesar's family. Loved him. They were great friends. They spent lots of time together. So on the Ides of March, when Caesar looked up at that same Brutus who was stabbing him to death, Shakespeare immortalizes Caesar's final words as "Et tu, Brute," meaning "you too, Brutus," meaning that he couldn't trust Brutus either. Benedict Arnold was a friend and protege of General George Washington, and one of the very few people that Washington could trust with his life. But he couldn't, could he? Arnold, as you know, was in fact a spy for the British, and most of his correspondence with Washington he turned over to the enemy. Benedict Arnold's plot to make sure Washington was either captured or assassinated, it crushed Washington when he found that out later on. History remembers both Brutus and Benedict Arnold as very intriguing people, but mostly as people who betrayed their friends. And I think for us they represent all those in our lives who we are not quite sure of their loyalty, and that makes us nervous sometimes. What are their intentions? Are they here to hurt us or to help us? So with that in mind, 2 days before the actual day of Epiphany, I want to look at the story of the Magi a little bit differently. And I want us all to forget for a moment the wonderful wise men in our Christmas programs that we've seen our whole lifetime. And I want us to forget the words of "We Three Kings" that remind us of this story during this season. Let's look at the account that the Bible gives us. And the reality is that we don't know the wise men's real intention either for looking for the baby Jesus. We know the stated intention was to pay homage to the new king. It says that a couple times in the passage from Matthew I read today. But it's also the case that they came from an area of the world called from the east, which means that they were likely Parthians. Parthians were ancient and fierce enemies of Rome, the folks who ruled Israel at this time. There's no doubt that these magi were in awe of the star's heavenly sign. They surely must have had some appreciation for the God who could cause such a thing to happen. But it's not also out of the realm of possibility that they were agents of their own empire, sent to make sure and to make some type of sense out of this unusual sign, this star. Is this baby whom the astrological readings tell them is a baby king, unlike all other kings? But more importantly, will he be a threat to our country? Is this baby one who will change the balance of world power? They've come to find out. The Magi arrive at King Herod's court, and they tell him about this newborn king. And of course, Herod was a psychopath. I've already told you about that. He killed most of his family and a lot of his friends. And a few verses later, he murders all of the children 2 years old and under in Bethlehem. No doubt Herod is suspicious of these guys coming from another area of the world that he's suspicious of to begin with. But Herod knows he can't send his own thugs out to take care of this business and find out who the baby is. So he sends the wise men instead. So for the first hearers of this story 2,000 years ago, many years ago, unlike those of us who have told and retold this story hundreds of times, I don't think the story is as simple as it seems. The Magi are overjoyed to find Jesus, but why? Why are they really there? Who do they really work for? Whose side are they on? When they hold up their gifts, will it be gifts for Jesus or a knife to kill this child? The biblical text is very brief at this point. It simply says, on entering the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts. That's it. But I think this is the point where the story changes from one of political intrigue to something else. No matter what the Magi's original intentions were, no matter if they had been questionable or they had conflicted allegiances, when they meet Jesus, something happens. I think the most important line in the story is the final one. They left for their own country by another road. We know now that the wise men are not going to plunge a knife into Jesus. They won't betray him to his enemies. Even if their original plans included both possibilities, meeting Jesus changes everything. And I want you to envision for a second, imagine King Herod's response when he realizes that they've not come back. I can't say the word in church, but it'd be something with P-O on it, probably. I bet he was cussing up a storm. I bet he was throwing furniture all over the place. But the wise men don't return that way. They walk a different road. Beginning that day, and we believe that maybe they continue to walk a different road for the rest of their lives. No matter whose side they were on, in the end they chose the side of the child that had that star shining over the place of his birth. They refused to comply with the plot to destroy Jesus. They choose Jesus. This has been a story that's been told countless times throughout Christian history, and it is also your story and my story. It's a story that I think every Christian has to confront in our lives at some point, because we too come with mixed motives and our intentions are not always clear. Why are you here? Why am I here? Why are we here in church this morning? Like the Magi, we have wonder and maybe a vague appreciation for God. But at least it used to be there was a social status in being a member, or it was a benefit in the business world. And there's still a cultural privilege to identifying as Christian, at least in the South. And we know it carries political power, as we've seen in recent elections. But of course, none of these things is the same as being a disciple of Jesus. None of these things have to do with loving or following Jesus, with truly being on his side. And as a matter of fact, sometimes our real reasons for being here undoubtedly give much pain to Jesus. Sometimes we're like spies pretending to follow Jesus. So I want us to soul search for just a moment. You don't have to say anything, but I want you to think, why are you here? Why are you a Christian? Down what road have you come? And the grace here is this: it doesn't matter. The wise men might have been spies twice over, double agents for their own kingdom and for King Herod. But when they meet Jesus, that road changed. Forgetting everything that went before, they experienced great joy. They knelt before the new Lord of their lives and opened their treasures as well as, I think, their hearts at the baby king's feet. And that's why I think we come to church. even if it isn't what originally brought us here. The King of love has been born, and we know how desperately we need that love in the world as it is now. That King is real. That King is the Lord of the world. And the pivotal question now is not how or why we got here, but what road will we now take because we have met Jesus? The encounter with Jesus can be brief. We can leave this place and walk back into the chaos, the wrong intentions, the mixed motives of our previous lives. Or we can, with all that we have in our being, humble ourselves before this new King, handing over the treasure of our hearts fully to this King. Epiphany tells us that we can rise and walk a different road, guided by the light of Jesus. The child is born. Whose side are you on? Amen.